A man who lives alone without a girlfriend is not a man who lacks love. He is a man who has not settled for less than his God-given identity. Let me break this down for you with 4 powerful truths. When a man lives alone, no girlfriend, no relationship, no consistent companionship, it's easy for the world to label him as lonely, broken, or incomplete. Society markets the idea that if you're single, something must be wrong with you. You're either emotionally unavailable, socially awkward, or simply undesirable. But let me challenge that belief right now. Living alone isn't a curse. It isn't a failure, and it most definitely isn't a sentence handed down for being unworthy of love. It's a season of strategy, a divine window of opportunity granted by God to become the man you're meant to be before you're connected to someone else's destiny. Most people don't understand the power of solitude because they confuse it with loneliness. But there's a critical difference. Loneliness is the painful awareness of being without others. Solitude, on the other hand, is the powerful experience of being with yourself and with God without distraction. In solitude, a man finds clarity. He starts to hear thoughts that have been drowned out by noise. He begins to recognize habits, patterns, and even traumas that were never healed because there was always someone or something there to distract him. Solitude strips away the surface and forces you to face yourself. Now, here's the beauty of it. When you face yourself with honesty and courage, you unlock growth. And growth is the most strategic investment a man can make in any season of life, especially before stepping into a relationship. The man who builds himself in solitude becomes the man who brings strength into connection, not weakness. You see, the danger of rushing out of solitude into companionship is this. If you haven't mastered your inner world, you'll use someone else to numb what you're not willing to fix. Many people enter relationships looking for rescue, not realizing that love doesn't fix a lack of purpose. Only purpose does that. You cannot build a life on romance alone. Feelings fade, infatuation dies. But identity, vision, discipline, those are the bricks that build legacy. So when you find yourself alone, don't see it as punishment. See it as preparation, a time to dig deeper into who you are, what you believe, where you're going, and how you're growing. Because if you wait until you're in a relationship to figure that out, you're already too late. Do you think Joseph complained while he was in the pit or in the prison? Maybe he did. But guess what? Those seasons didn't break him, they built him. You know? His isolation was God's strategy. The palace wasn't the place where Joseph became a leader. It was the solitude of the prison. That's where character was refined, not just dreams interpreted. Your current solitude might look like a setback, but it's setting you up for something greater. And God elevates you, you'll realize the alone time wasn't wasted. It was absolutely essential. So what does it look like to treat solitude as a strategy? It means becoming the kind of man who doesn't wait for accountability, he builds it. It means creating structure in your day, managing your money with wisdom, and developing your skills until you are no longer relying on a partner to bring stability. Because here's the truth. If you can't govern your own life, you have no business trying to lead someone else's heart. Leadership starts in the mirror. And solitude is where that mirror becomes clear. When you're alone, you're also free. Free from the distractions of emotional entanglements, late night compromises, and false validation. You don't have to check in with anyone but God. You can wake up early to pray, stay up late to build and restructure your life without asking anyone for permission. That's power, that's leverage, that's strategy. And when you use it wisely, you emerge from solitude stronger, wiser, and far more grounded than the man who spent his single years chasing short-term pleasure over long-term purpose. Let's be real. There's a reason so many men lose themselves in relationships. It's not because love is bad. It's because they never built a solid self before love arrived. They thought partnership would solve their pain, only to discover that relationships magnify what you bring into them. If you're broken, love amplifies your brokenness. If you're whole, love multiplies your strength. That's why this season matters. And that's why solitude is your greatest gift right now. Instead of craving company, cultivate character. Instead of begging for connection, build capacity. Because the version of you that is rising in this quiet, private season will become the man that a great woman prays for, and more importantly, the man that God can trust with influence, responsibility, and legacy. So if you're living alone, don't let that silence feel like shame. Let it feel like strategy. You're not missing out. You're leveling up. And when the time is right, God will bring the right person at the right time to meet the right man, but he's not going to interrupt your process just to satisfy your impatience. He's more interested in your becoming than your comfort. Solitude is not a life sentence. It is sacred space. And if you steward it well, you won't just come out of it ready to love, you'll come out of it ready to lead. A man is not made by how many women want him. He's not defined by how many dates he goes on, how attractive his girlfriend is, or whether he's in a relationship at all. In today's culture, masculinity has been falsely tied to romance, as if a man's worth is measured by someone else's desire for him. But that's a lie, a dangerous one, because when a man builds his identity on being wanted rather than being responsible, he sets himself up for emotional bankruptcy and spiritual collapse. Masculinity isn't measured by how many hearts you can win. It's refined by how many weights you can carry without breaking, without quitting, without passing the burden to someone else. True masculinity shows up when the lights are off, when the crowd is gone, and when there's no applause. It's in how a man wakes up and handles his business. It's in how he manages his money, how he treats his mother, how he guards his thoughts, and how he honors God when no one's watching. A real man doesn't need a relationship to validate him. He's too busy building, growing, serving, and leading to chase that kind of shallow affirmation. Not because love isn't valuable, but because identity can't be outsourced. See, if you need someone to love you in order to love yourself, that's not masculinity. That's dependency in disguise. Responsibility is the fire that forges true manhood. It's the pressure that reveals whether you're made of flesh or iron. And when you embrace it, something incredible happens. You stop looking for someone to complete you, and you start becoming someone who is already whole. You become someone who can handle life on life's terms. Someone who doesn't make excuses, someone who doesn't run when it gets hard, someone who understands that comfort never creates kings. Pressure does. The man who lives alone without a girlfriend is not weak. If he's walking in purpose, paying his bills, managing his emotions, and walking with God, he's not behind, he's ahead. He's rare. Because most men have never been taught that singleness is not a time to waste. It's a test of responsibility. It's a time to prove you can lead yourself before you lead someone else, that you can handle your own spiritual, emotional, and financial house before you invite someone else to live in it. Look at any man who's fallen apart in a relationship. Look closely. 9 times out of 10, he skipped a season of self-leadership. He went from being mothered to being married, never learning how to govern himself. So when life got hard, he expected his partner to carry what he never learned to own, and that's not love. That's laziness dressed in affection. Masculinity requires stewardship. It means taking responsibility for your thoughts, your finances, your time, your body, your future. It means no one has to beg you to grow. No one has to remind you to keep your word. No one has to fix what you break because you've learned how to fix yourself. That's power, that's leadership, that's manhood. And if you're waiting for a woman to arrive in order to feel like a man, you're already giving away your power. Because the truth is, she's not supposed to make you a man, she's supposed to meet one. She's not there to be your crutch, she's there to be your complement. But how can someone compliment you if you haven't even completed the foundation? The weight of masculinity is not meant to be carried alone, but it must be carried first. That's what Jesus did. Before he ever called disciples, before he healed anyone, before he went public, he spent time in isolation, fasting, resisting temptation, and carrying the weight of obedience alone. If the Son of God needed to prove responsibility before revealing his mission, what makes any man think he can skip that part of the process? So the next time someone tries to measure your manhood by your relationship status, smile and walk away, because real kings don't explain their worth. They demonstrate it through consistency, through sacrifice, through restraint, through staying committed to something bigger than temporary pleasure. You don't become a man when someone falls in love with you. You become a man when you fall in love with your assignment. When you wake up early, not because someone's watching, but because you refuse to let purpose down. When you budget, build, and believe even when it's not exciting. When you turn down what looks good so you can grow into what's best. That's not just masculinity, that's mastery. The men who change the world aren't the ones chasing relationships to feel better about themselves. They're the ones who chase wisdom, chase excellence, chase vision. They're the ones who embrace the burden of becoming instead of the distraction of always needing to be seen. So if you're walking this journey alone right now, not in a relationship, not being praised or pursued, don't you dare believe that you're less of a man. You're more. Because the man who refines himself through responsibility becomes the man who doesn't just attract a woman, he attracts a mission, a legacy, and the favor of God. The responsibility is the refinery. Let it burn away the noise, the weakness, the excuses. What's left after the fire? A man, a real one. One who doesn't need the world's approval because he's already walking in God's assignment. The world keeps telling men that the ultimate goal is to find love, get married, and live happily ever after. As if the moment you find a woman, everything in your life will suddenly come together. That's a dangerous myth, because if you're waiting on romance before you build anything meaningful in your life, you are building backwards. You don't build a legacy on love alone. You build it on purpose, vision, discipline, and obedience. Love adds to the legacy, but it cannot become the foundation of it. Romance is a blessing, no doubt. God created connection. He said it's not good for man to be alone, but he didn't say it's not good for man to be broke, unfocused, undisciplined, or directionless while trying to find love. And too many men are chasing intimacy without first building infrastructure. What good is love if you have nowhere to take it? What good is a relationship if the two of you are just floating without a mission? You can and should build legacy before you build romance. Because romance may bring you companionship, but legacy builds something that outlives you. Legacy is what your children will inherit, what your community will remember, and what God will hold you accountable for. Legacy is the result of you sowing seeds today that produce fruit in seasons you haven't even lived through yet. That doesn't start after you find the right one. It starts when you decide to become the right man. Don't confuse love with purpose. A relationship doesn't qualify you to lead. Responsibility does. Clarity does. Purpose does. God didn't give Adam a wife first. He gave Adam an assignment, a garden, and a command. Only when Adam proved faithful with the assignment did God say, "It is not good for man to be alone." The woman came after the work. She was sent to help, not to heal, fix, or complete Adam. So here's the question. What are you building now that a wife could help you with later? If the answer is nothing, then you're not ready. Not because you're not lovable, but because love isn't enough to sustain a life without purpose. Two people in love with no direction are just emotionally entertained and spiritually stagnant. A man without vision will always exhaust the woman who tries to help him. So the real work isn't in finding romance. It's in building a runway for it to land on when the time is right. Legacy looks like structure, like financial literacy, like discipline in how you manage your time, your thoughts, and your body. Legacy looks like making decisions that aren't just for today, but for tomorrow and 10 years from now. Legacy looks like waking up with vision before you wake up next to someone. It looks like rejecting laziness, breaking generational cycles, and choosing standards over shortcuts. When you build legacy, you are not just preparing to be a boyfriend. You're preparing to be a husband, a father, a provider, a leader. You're preparing to cover someone else spiritually and emotionally. And that takes more than charm or chemistry. It takes calling. It takes capacity. It takes a man who's already built something worth sharing. The beautiful thing is, Building legacy is not about being rich. It's about being responsible. You may not have $1 million, but you can start with the 5 you have. You may not have a mansion, but you can create order and excellence in your 1-bedroom apartment. You may not be where you want to be yet, but you can live with vision, with integrity, with purpose. And those are the foundations legacy is built on. A man who builds legacy before romance walks differently. He's not desperate for attention because he's too focused on assignment. He's not distracted by lust because he's consumed with vision. And when the right woman comes along, he doesn't just offer her feelings, he offers her fruit from years of sowing, fruit from years of faithfulness, fruit from the quiet, private seasons that no one clapped for. Romance, when it comes, is beautiful. It can add joy, depth, and support to the journey. But if you're using romance as your launch pad, you've missed the order. The woman you'll eventually love deserves to find a man who's been doing the work. Not a man looking for her to be the work, not a man looking for her to rescue him from the discomfort of becoming, but a man who stands on his own with vision in his heart and calluses on his hands. You can and must build legacy before you build romance. Not because love isn't important, but because the man you're becoming needs more than love to fulfill his assignment. He needs systems. He needs spiritual discipline. He needs emotional maturity. And those are the things you don't find in a relationship. Those are the things you bring into one. So start building now. Build when no one is watching. Build when no one believes in you. Build when it's lonely. Build when you're tired, because when romance eventually shows up, it will not be the beginning. It will be the blessing on top of the work you've already done. And that, my brother, is how a man builds something that outlasts him. Romance is temporary. Legacy is eternal. There's something about delay that makes people uneasy, something about waiting that causes doubt to creep in, insecurity to take root, and comparison to poison your process. Because in a world that celebrates instant gratification, we've been trained to see delay as rejection. If it didn't happen fast, it must not be happening at all. If it's not now, it's probably never. But that's not how God operates. Delay is not denial, it's divine design. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. The pause in your life is not punishment, it's preparation. God is never in a rush, but he is always on time. And when you understand that, you stop panicking during the wait. You stop questioning your worth just because the door didn't open when you thought it would. And you stop assuming that your delay is a dead end when it might just be a detour towards something greater than you could imagine. Let's get one thing clear. A delay is not God saying no. It's often him saying not yet. Why? Because he's building something in you that the thing you're waiting for will require. He's shaping your character, expanding your capacity, solidifying your faith. See, you're not just waiting for the blessing. You're being shaped to withstand the blessing. Many people want the promise, but don't want the process. They want the elevation without the endurance. But God doesn't just give blessings, he gives assignments. And if he were to bless you too soon, it would break you. A premature blessing can feel like a curse when you haven't been prepared to carry it. Look at David, anointed to be king as a teenager, but didn't sit on the throne until years later. In between the oil and the crown, there was rejection, wilderness, betrayal, hiding, and fighting. Why? Because the same God who declared David a king needed to develop him as a warrior. Delay wasn't denial. It was divine design, because God wasn't just after the throne for David. He was after David's heart. And you might feel like you're stuck, like life is on pause, like everyone else is moving forward and you're still in the waiting room. But what if you're not stuck? You're stationed. What if God placed you in this season on purpose? Because the next one will require strength that can only be formed in silence. You're not late. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're being crafted. See, we want doors to open, but God wants our character to be strong enough to walk through them. We want the platform, but God wants the integrity to sustain it. We want the relationship, But God wants our identity rooted in him before we attach it to someone else. So the delay, it's not God punishing you, it's God protecting you. Sometimes the delay isn't even about you. Sometimes it's about the people connected to your purpose. God might be orchestrating a whole set of circumstances that have nothing to do with your timeline and everything to do with his vision. He's setting up divine appointments that you don't see yet, lining up resources you didn't ask for, breaking chains you didn't even know existed. That's not denial. That's design. And when you finally get to the season you've been praying for, you'll realize why it took so long. You'll see that every not yet was God saying, hold on, I'm doing something better. Every closed door was God saying, that's not your room. Every heartbreak, every failed opportunity, every slow season was God shaping your story, not shutting it down. The enemy wants you to give up in the delay. He wants you to question God's timing and abandon your assignment. But real faith isn't proven when the door opens. It's proven while you wait outside, still believing. Real maturity is shown when you can say, even if it hasn't happened yet, I'm still standing, I'm still building, I'm still praising because I trust the designer more than I trust my deadline. You don't need it to happen fast, you need it to happen right. And God only builds right. He never rushes. He is strategic, surgical, and sovereign. That's why the longer it takes, the more you can trust it's going to be worth it. So instead of resenting the delay, lean into it. Use this time to develop what's undeveloped, strengthen what's weak, refine what's rough, become the kind of man who doesn't just wait, he works while waiting. Because faith without works is dead, but waiting with wisdom is divine. If God put the dream in your heart, he will fulfill it in his time. If he closed the door, it's because he's preparing something better. If he said wait, it's because he loves you too much to give you something before you're ready. So take a breath, look around, stand tall. The delay is not the end. It's the